who is... So our final speaker is Matt Huentelman, who's professor and director of the Neurogenomics Division at the Translational Genomics Research Institute in Phoenix, Arizona.
Thanks. This session ends in 2 minutes, right?
No, the session ends at
1:15. Great. I was rehearsing my talk to be a lot faster. Okay, thanks for hanging around to the end, and I definitely will get you out on time now because it was going to be much quicker. So starting off by thanking my team, also recognizing the Unity Project and the Gates Foundation for supporting this. I'm coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona, at a little nonprofit research institute there. I'm a neuroscientist, but I'm focused on genomics. And for some reason, I'm going to tell you about 600 low-field images today. I am not a neuroimager. I'm not a physicist. The only images that I've ever acquired in my life have been low-field images. That's another reason why this technology is a game changer. Just like many of you in the audience, I like to study people who are sick because I'm trying to help people, but I also think we all realize that we have to study with a healthy brain to understand the sick brain. If anybody here had a second life as a car mechanic, you don't start with a broken car. You take apart a perfectly working car to figure out what's going on. And oftentimes we miss that in neuroscience. So our solution to really gather lots of data is to have our study live on the internet. So you're all welcome to join, actually. You can join in English or Spanish by visiting us at mindcrowd.org. It takes about 10 minutes to join our study. We're 10 years old. We didn't start doing online testing because of the pandemic, like many of our peers. We've been doing this for over a decade. Over 500,000 people have joined our study, and that includes over 50 million data points. So real briefly, as I mentioned, it takes about 10 minutes. We collect demographic information in 2 different cognitive tests, a processing speed test and a verbal memory test. Again, as mentioned, it's available in Spanish and English, and because we live on the internet, we recruit around 300 people a day into our study. So as I speak to you, I'm recruiting people into this internet-based research. We do remote collections of DNA as well, and automated longitudinal testing. But the reason I'm telling you about this is because it helps us reach the underserved. Over 80% of our participants are underserved in research. That includes many things other than just race ethnicity, including ruralness. 11% of our participants are from rural United States zip codes, 25% with high school diplomas or less, over 3% over the age of 65, 20% who are non-white participants, and almost 19% who are Hispanic or Latino. Let me tell you about just a little bit of the data to show you that this is working. I'll tell you about the verbal memory task, which is called paired associate learning. We did not develop this task. This task is over 100 years old, developed in 1894. That's really powerful because we know exactly what brain regions participate when you're doing this task. It's the medial temporal lobe, hippocampus, entorhinal cortex, perirhinal cortex are all really important for this. And many of you who study the brain understand those are really structures that change with aging and also age-related diseases like Alzheimer's disease, which I am particularly interested in. So we just reduced this to practice on the internet 11 years ago. Here are the data just to show you a little bit about this cognitive task. Very clear aging effect on the left side of the screen where you can see age along the x-axis and then performance on the task on the y-axis. 0 is the worst you can score and 36 is a perfect score on this task. You can see how wonderful the variation is across the human population. Each one of those dots is a participant. But you can also see the very clear trend of decreasing performance with age. It's also well known that women are better than men at this task. We were the first to show it using a single study that extends across the entire lifespan from 18 to over 100. And also there's an effect of education. So these are 3 very well-known effects for this particular task, just showing you the data so you can get familiar with this internet-based quality. But what I want to focus on today is really on the rural participants. So as I mentioned, almost 11% of our cohort comes from rural United States zip codes. And I wanted to go meet those people face to face, and this is how we did it. We developed a customized car trailer, and we stuck the hyperfine swoop in the back of it. In the front of the car trailer, that front door, is a wet laboratory for processing blood samples, doing participant interviews, for example. And I'll show you the back here. If you have a cool trailer, you have to have a cool truck to pull it around. Both of those with branding about our study, which is obviously branded with the Mindcrowd name. And there's some pictures of the neuroimaging suite. That might be giving it a little too much credit, but that's the back of the trailer with a motorized hospital bed and the hyperfine swoop there right in the center of the trailer and attached to the floor. So this is where we do our brain imaging. And we've been extremely successful, in my opinion. We image almost 100 participants every month. We just started this in January, and so we're up and over 500, approximately 600 participants by the end of this month. An incredible ability to scan different ages. 18 years is the youngest we can scan with this particular research protocol, and we have also scanned a few people actually who are over 95, and one woman is our current record holder at 101 and a half years old. So incredible data set. We will reach 1,000 or 1,200 scans by the end of this year. Remember, I've never scanned a brain before until January 19th. Okay, really powerful technology. We are tracking QC as best we can, scanning this special mini hybrid made by Caliber MRI across time. Many people were stressed about us moving around the MRI in the back of this car trailer. Would it affect data quality? To me, I'm pretty happy with how stable it seems, and we will continue to measure this. So every time we scan in the field, we scan the phantom to start the day off. So with the 5 minutes I have left before I take questions, I'm just going to show you some of the data. So our visit in the mobile laboratory is about an hour long. 35 minutes of that is the MRI scan. We collect other things, though, including blood pressure, and we use a body impedance scale to look at things like percent skeletal muscle, showing you guys here very clearly that there are differences between men and women, and there's an effect of age on skeletal muscle mass. Grip strength is a nice correlation for frailty, showing on the left-hand side here, grip strength decreases with age, and actually males have a quicker decline in grip strength. That's also well known. We also do a quick smell test. It's a 16-item choice smell test where you smell something and we ask you to decide what you just smelled from 4 different options. This is a standardized smell test. And you can see a decrease in performance with age as well. And the folks who are anosmic, people who are scoring zeros down there, we haven't seen that below the age of 60 in our participants. Again, this is all expected, just showing you some of the quality data that you can collect with a mobile laboratory, trying to convince all of you to think about this in your next studies. We also have the cognitive data, so each person gets a cognitive test. It's the Mindcrowd test that I just showed you, so we can compare them to our cohort of 500,000 people. On the left side, verbal memory decreasing with age. I already showed you those data for the large cohort. And the processing speed increasing with age, so you're getting slower with your processing speed with age. Okay, let's get to the data you guys care about. Here are the brain imaging data. And I'm just going to show you the hippocampal volume because the folks before me have hopefully convinced you at least a little bit about the quality of these measures across other brain regions. Let's focus on the hippocampus because this is the region that is really important for performance on the verbal memory task that I mentioned. And you can see quite clearly, this is known, by the way, that the hippocampal volume corrected by ICV volume in general decreases with age. So here we are showing data from 18 years through 101 years on the left side, but also starting to identify some biological sex differences where women seem to have a higher hippocampal volume to ICV volume, and they tend to protect that a little bit better based on the slope of the lines compared to men. A lot more data to collect. The other thing I'll mention to you guys is that we're not cleaning this at all. This is the raw data showing you straight off the scanner. Everybody who completed a scan is included here. We're not throwing away any of the poor quality scans. They're here on these plots for you to see. We also collect blood and process blood right there in real time, and we have nice data from known biomarkers. So in this case, I'm showing you neurofilament light chain on the left side. That is increasing in concentration with age. That's a known biomarker of age. But also IL-6 and CRP, which correlate with inflammation. And I'm showing you here that those correlate with body mass index as measured by our scale, the impedance scale in these participants. So those are known effects. So in summary, I hope I've convinced you at least a little bit that the mobile approach to this low-field MRI could play a role in science as we move forward. And I, of course, think that the strongest study design includes all three things. What do I mean by that? I mean in-person testing, in-laboratory testing. There are just some things we do in our labs that cannot be done on the road, but also electronic engagement of your cohort, maybe even electronic testing or survey administration. That's how you keep people engaged. And then, of course, the mobile laboratory gets you out there into environments, gets you to meet people in their environment, and you can study a lot of people who will not show up at your academic laboratories face-to-face. If you come to them, they will participate. So start to think about, in my opinion, how you might combine all of these things. One last thing I'll leave you with is a lot of people wonder about incidental findings with the low field. And since there's not a whole lot of data out there, I can tell you we see about 1% incidental findings with our low field. I think I've probably returned 5 incidental findings out of 500 or 600 total scans. So we're right around 1%, I would say, which is lower than high field. That's to be expected because we don't see quite as much, right? But just to help you out a bit, that's what we're expecting with the low field stuff. Okay, happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could share some more details about the process of getting this mobile MRI unit up and running, like practically.
Yeah.
How, like, is this something that other people can do? How much money did it cost, and how long did it take? Things like that.
Great question. So yes, it's really important. You need to have the participation of your entire institute. This is the first I've been at TGen for 20 years. This is the first project I did where I needed everyone across the institute to help, all the way from facilities through safety. Where do we park it? How do we insure it? How do you get a Department of Transportation number? So standing up the unit itself was about $500,000. Then operating it for the year is about another $500,000. But if you can get 1,000 scans for $500,000, you can do the math. That's probably cheaper than you currently pay for one scan at your academic institute. So I think it's very doable, but you are right. It will be a challenge. If your institute is not able to think outside of the box, there are a lot of moving parts to stand this up. So you really need a strong support from your institute to get this going. Yeah.
This is amazing. Thank you. I have 2 questions. First one is also for František. Have you thought of specific neuroscience questions you can answer with this and you cannot with the classic MRI? Of course, this kind of answers already, because you can reach a lot of people that you cannot reach with the classic MRI. But I was thinking, is there any specific neuroscience question? And on the other hand, I have quite an opposite question about the clinical implications. You know, a big problem of cancer is that you cannot detect it. You could potentially detect it, but sometimes it's too late. And the reason is that, you know, scans are very expensive. So I was thinking, maybe, have you thought of using portable MRI to detect, for example, cancers of also gastrointestinal or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah, I think
these are quite different questions, but
well, they're kind of similar, because I think that you're asking basically what's the role this could play that's disruptive, and I think mobile MRI will be disruptive in medicine. That'll be a slower road, I think, but it's a really important road. Higher frequency of monitoring, for example. Regarding low field, I think there are probably some advantages to the physics. I'm not a physicist, so I'll defer to František. But I think the other big thing for me is reaching populations that we can't typically study and reaching them longitudinally. So the fact that I'll be able to go out and longitudinally image these folks over a long period of time, that's actually, I know it's not what you're getting at, like is there some special neuroscience question, but I think the demographic question is a really important one. And so I think, I would argue back to you that that really matters. I know you agree with that too, but it's, I think that's the first place to start because it's a pretty obvious place. Yeah.
I'll just add very briefly. As I mentioned at the start, I think this is not going to replace high-field MRI. I think that's definitely here to stay. But I think it can complement it. You can scan a lot more people, come to them. You could use this as a screening test. So
Right.
one thing we've talked about is taking MRI to new settings, taking it to the participants, taking it to low and middle income countries, but even in high income countries. I'm based in the UK. If you're prescribed an MRI scan, you might wait 2 months, 3 months to have your scan. And you could very well imagine a future where you have this in every doctor's clinic. You come in complaining of a headache, and instead of referring you for a scan, in 2-3 months' time, they'll say, hop in, they'll run a pipeline, run some sort of automated abnormality detection software based on AI and use it as a screening test. So I think there's a lot of potential there. Let's take last 2 questions there. And thank you.
One comment, do you really think the NHS would do that? No, I'm kidding, it's fine.
Sorry?
Do you really think the NHS would do that? That's not my question.
To be confirmed, but we're setting up clinical studies, so yeah.
So I have a question. So you said you're pretty happy with your QC for your moving around with regards to extra noise and temperature, but did you ever take the MRI, the hyperfine, out of your fancy van? Because in low and middle income countries, your fancy van might not be an accessible way to get it to places, so it might have to be put in more local community centers or schools and stuff. Do you think like temperature changes and other noise might have obviously a larger effect, but do you think that is still feasible?
I think it's very feasible. We're imaging in the desert, so we wake up and it's, 75 F. By the middle of the day, we're 110.
Is that controlled in your van, though? Is the temperature controlled?
As best we can, but it's not perfect at all. So I think, yes, there are big temperature swings. There are, cars that park next to us that we can't control. So I think there's a lot here that at first blush would say, oh my gosh, we should worry about all these things. And I do think they're important, don't get me wrong. But I also think that a lot of these people have never even experienced or participated in an MRI study. And so it's that balance, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that'll improve, basically. The QC and the quality will improve over time.
And similarly so Hyperfine has the sensors for noise, right? The reduction, the electronic ones. In other low field machines that don't necessarily have those sectors and have to use like full body shim, do you think that's also going to be more of a problem without the electronic sensors in these different environments? Or do you think it's still feasible with extra processing, et cetera, denoising?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that large data sets will help us overcome a lot of these noise issues.
Okay.
But I think you're absolutely right that it's sort of to be seen, right?
Yeah, hopefully our group will help with that. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Time? All right, thanks for the great talk. A quick question: Do you have a sense of the type of are you mentioned a few times in your talk that you're able to kind of bring the MRI to people that may not have access to it. So if you look at your cohort right now, is it actually more varied? Is it more diverse than one would expect a clinical cohort to be? Or are you going to suffer from the same selection or biases? It's just now they happen to be at home.
No, we're absolutely more diverse. Sorry, I should have pulled those demographics. 15 to 20% Hispanic Latino for our group, which typical research study, clinical study, low tens, 5 maybe, but also the ruralness. So we've done 50% urban and 50% rural. So this study itself is half rural U.S. zip codes. Pretty underserved group.
And same thing with SES. Do you kind of have a pretty good range there as well?
Yeah, SES has a good range too. Yeah. So I think it's not the answer.
Right.
It doesn't result in this incredible shift in diversity, but it definitely is better diversity than you would see in a typical cohort. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you'll agree this is very exciting. It's very much work in progress, but with a huge potential. So watch this space. There are 3 posters about this work, Wednesday and Thursday. So there's a poster on my presentation, Levy's presentation, and Fran's work on brain age. So come talk to us or catch us now or later if you're interested. And yeah, please join me in thanking all the speakers again. Thank you.